and we're actually holding in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch the final chapter of the laws of Shabbos. So I don't know if we'll finish it this week or next, but we'll decide. I'm leaning towards continuing with the laws of the holidays of Yom Tov because that's important as well. So we'll see. We'll decide over the next few days. Let's bring up the text. Hey Rebecca, let's bring up the text. Oh, so let's see if it's working. Oh, here we go. Okay, so Rebecca, as I was telling Barbara before, this is the last chapter of the laws of Shabbos. We'll see what we're going to go through the next after this. I think we'll stay with the laws, a class on the law. This class used to be, we learned in it the Tomer Devorah, which is actually tonight is yesterday's, Wednesday is the recited of the Ramak, the author of the Tomer Devorah. It's a big schus to learn a little bit of the Tomer Devorah today, if anyone can. There's also we learned Shar Bitachon in this class, so we'll see. Maybe we'll go to one of those, or we'll continue in a class of law, maybe in the laws of holidays. Okay, so here is chapter 96, the laws concerning the Maariv prayer on Shabbos night and Havdalah. Meaning, this is now already holding the laws of Motzei Shabbos. Motzei Shabbos is leaving the Shabbos. So what are the laws of how we complete Shabbos? So when it comes to the Maariv prayer, so it says Noyagin, the custom is, and this you'll see many shuls are very excited about this custom. Shema Achron Tfilas Avris is to daven Maariv a little later, not to rush into Maariv. It's interesting. I mean, in Seattle and where Barbara is, it's maybe a little more difficult. Places in the north where Shabbos goes out really late. So in the summer, it's a little harder to extend Shabbos. In New York, it's a little less. But in Eretz Yisrael also, we kind of don't finish later than 8:30 or so. But still, it's the minyan that I daven in, actually, the chief rabbi davens there, is that we daven really late. I mean, not Rabbeinu Tam, but late for the regular Shabbos, because you're not supposed to run out of Shabbos. And also, Ba'amiris V'hu Racham, when we say the V'hu Racham, which is the opening line of prayer to the Maariv, is Mamshichim Benugan, is to say it, the custom is to say it in a long singing way, like v'hu hu hu rachum. Why? Why do we do this? What's the idea of it? Even though it's just adding a few seconds, is kedei lahoisif michol ala kodesh, because we want to show that we want to take away from the week and add Shabbos, extend Shabbos a bit. The Rebbe actually told my grandfather, I think, once to keep Rabbeinu Tam. So Rabbeinu Tam's Zmanim is even further. I think it's 20 or so minutes. I'm not an expert in Zmanim, but it's definitely, there's a minyanim here in Yerushalayim where you could daven Motzei Shabbos with the Rabbeinu Tam's time. So betfilas avris oimrim, and then so it's okay. So the first thing is try to daven our Maariv a little later, and to open up the tefillah of arvis a little longer, the v'hu hu rachum, and this is all. So we should add from the chol and the kodesh. Other ideas that are brought down is because we know that the hell is closed on Shabbos, and all the souls of hell go to heaven on Shabbos. So then after Shabbos, unfortunately, they have to go back to their lodgings in hell. So we want to extend the Shabbos so they don't have to run back. Okay, so then he continues. There's Shulchan Aruch says, "B'tfilas avris omim atachon antonu." There's a special insert that we do on Friday and Saturday night, Motzei Shabbos, which is in the Atachonen, the fourth blessing, is we add the Atachon Antana, which is a special prayer of the Havdalah. So we do the Havdalah, which is we separate from the Shabbos into the week. We do it both in the prayer of Maariv, and we do it on a cup, on a kois, afterwards when we're at home or in shul, depending where you do it, with the fire and the spices to smell. But we'll learn about that. So then we do the Atachon and Tanu in Maariv. Technically, once you've davened Maariv and said the Atachon and Tanu, you did the Havdalah. You separated from Shabbos into Chol. But what happens if you forget? It's very possible to forget. Today I notice you don't even have your phone. That today our phones give us reminders of the inserts, but we don't have that on Motzei Shabbos usually. So if you forgot, then you didn't say. So he says the law is as follows. If before you said Baruch Atah Hashem Chaynein Hadas or whatever, the bracha finishes according to your nusach. So if you remembered before you said Baruch Atah Hashem, so then you say it will you remembered that you forgot it. So he gives you another few words or a line or so before where you're supposed to insert it, if you insert it right before the Baruch Atah Hashem. V'omer v'chanenu, you go back to v'chanenu, and you go into, and after you say the Atachon and Tani, you go v'chanenu mitchachach mabina v'das, and you say, you finish the bracha. Aval im lo niskar ad la'achar Shemiras Hashem. What happens if you've completed the blessing of Atachon in the first blessing, and then, you remembered, you forgot to say the Havdalah in the Tefillah? Is gomer it's a bracha chonin and das ve'ein chayzer? Then after you said it, even if you said Baruch Atah Hashem, you didn't even say chonin and das, but you remembered, I didn't say Havdalah in the davening, so then you just continue, you complete the bracha, and you do not go back to say the Havdalah. Because the plan is, of course, is that you're going to make the proper Havdalah on the cup afterwards. So therefore, it's not like a missed, it's not totally missed because you're going to complete it when you say the Havdalah on the cup. Now here, this is an important thing. If for whatever reason you're a person who doesn't daven Maariv, or you forgot to say Havdalah, is Yizar Ma'id Shloi Lasis Shum Halacha, you should not do any kind of work, meaning any violation of the Shabbos. V'shlo yitam klum, and not just that, you shouldn't eat anything. Koidim she'avdal kais. You can't do anything until you make avdal in the kais. V'masem malacha oitam. What happens if you did do something? Turn on a light or something, or you tasted something. Tarach lachzer l'spar, then you have to go and daven again, and then put in the atachonan. Let's see the footnotes on that. What happens if you don't have a cup, you have nothing to make Havdalah on, and you forget to make to say it? Then there's other laws that we'll see in the footnotes. Okay, everyone knows about the idea. We're going to learn about the women who don't have a Maariv that say Hamavdim Kodesh L'chol. But we'll get to that in a second. Of course, also this would apply. The last parentheses would apply if you forget Chonen Hadas on Matzah Shabbos, which is Tisha B'Av, which we don't make on a coast. Then that would be also a situation where you don't make Havdalah. But let's see all the points of the footnote. Barbara, you wanted to ask something before I say the footnotes?
No, sorry, I just accidentally hit something here.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, on Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, the Maariv prayer should be said at a later hour. Says, he quotes the Shulchan Aruch 2391 again because you want to add a little bit more time into Shabbos. And we say the V'huracham in a chant. This is brought down in the Ramah, which is the Ashkenazi authority over the comments on the Shulchan Aruch, in his footnotes on Shulchan Aruch 2933. Footnote number 3 should be drawn down in order to add to the mundane to the sacred. Okay. Regarding the start of Maariv prayer, it's only customary. However, regarding the start of the Maariv prayer, it's only customary. However, in regard to Malacha, it is obligatory to add a few minutes to the end of Shabbos and Yom Tov. So he's in the footnote, he's saying an important thing. This idea that we daven Maariv a little later that's itself a custom, is a minhag. But the fact that you have to be moisid with Shabbos achol when it comes to actually the laws of Shabbos, that is obligatory. To add a few minutes at the end of Shabbos and Yom Tov. According to some opinions, 2 minutes. You have to add 2 minutes from what would be technically the completion of Shabbos into the Motzei Shabbos. You have to add 2 minutes at least. According to others, it's 5 minutes. See, She'erim Mitzionim, I think it's called Halacha. Okay, Shar Mitzionim Halacha, all right. 4. So we add in the Atachon Antanu in Chonen Hadas. During the fourth blessing of the Shemiras Atachonin. So in the fourth blessing of Atachonin is when we add the Havdalah of Motzei Shabbos. Footnote number 5. So he says like this: if you did a melacha or ate something, you must repeat the Shemona Esrei. Let's see footnote number 5, because that's an interesting law. That here we say like this: that if you do Havdalah, you're supposed to. Okay, how are things supposed to be? You're supposed to say Shemona. You're supposed to dav Maariv a little late, say V'huracham a little long, say the Shemona Esrei. In the fourth blessing, add the Atachon and Tanu, which is the Havdalah in the prayer. If you forgot and you remembered before you said Baruch Atah Hashem, you say it right then and there, and then continue V'chanenu mitchachach mabina v'das. If you've remembered after you mentioned Hashem's name, then just don't worry about it because you will make Havdalah in a cup. But you cannot do malacha. You can't do something that would be considered a transgression of the Shabbos or eat anything before you make the Havdalah. What happens if you did do a malacha and eat? So now we have a law that we haven't really seen before. You have to go back now and say the Shemona Esrei with the Havdalah. Hold on, Rebecca. Let's see the footnote why. This time, making sure to include Atachon and Tenu. The Ber Halacha partially disagrees with the author and rules that only upon eating must you repeat the Shemona Esrei, but not upon doing malacha. One who did not adhere to this halacha and recited Havdalah over wine without having repeated the Shemona Esrei no longer needs to repeat the Shemona Esrei according to the Pri Megadim. However, the Derech HaChaim rules that he must still repeat the Shemona Esrei. Okay, this is a very interesting. He doesn't give the reason why. But he says it because it's not a regular law. So he brings a few opinions. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that that if you eat after Shemona Esrei before you do Havdalah or do Malacha, you have to do Shemona Esrei again and add in the Atachon and Tanu. If you, according to who did he say it was? According to the Bir Halacha, he says that's only if you've done Malacha, but sorry, only if you've eaten something, then you have to daven Shemona Esrei again of Maariv, but not if you do a transgression, something that would consider a transgression on Shabbos. What about if you just didn't do Shemona Esrei and you did Havdalah on a cup? So he says the Pri Megadim says these all commentaries of the Shulchan Aruch. Then okay, whatever. So then that's it. You've did Havdalah on the cup. But or the Derech HaChaim says no. You still have to repeat the Shemona Esrei. It seems like it's kind of I don't know if we use the word of punishment, but it seems like it's a kind of a consequence of not adhering to the law. Yes, Rebecca.
But so for women, are women not allowed to do, women who don't daven Maariv, are they not allowed to do any malacha until they hear or make Havdalah?
We're gonna. I think I think it's discussed further down that for the woman that they would do the Baruch Hamav L'Makadosh.
Because I know a very prominent Rebbitzin I go to for Shabbos, and her
Yeah.
daughter, who's also a Rebbitzin in the area, calls her like immediately when Shabbos is over, before their husbands come back from shul, and they pick up the phone. They talk on the phone. They do say a mavdil, but then they talk on the phone and they hang up when they hear
I,
Havdalah.
I hear what you're saying, and it's definitely I think, but if I'm not mistaken, it's discussed further down. If not, then we'll discuss it. But I want to. I think he mentions it further down, if I remember correctly when I prepared the class. So
Okay.
let's see. All right, what is he right over here? If you did not have wine over which to recite with Havdalah and you forgot Atachon and Tano, then there's special laws. What are these special laws? He says like this. These rules are as follows. Okay, so we're talking about if you've forgotten Atachon and Tano and you do not have the ability to make Havdalah, you don't have wine, or let's say, I am assuming the same thing would apply, Matzeh Tisha B'Av, etc. If you remember before the blessing of Shemea Tefillah, means you're in Shemon Esrei, you know you don't have ability to make Havdalah, you've forgotten to do Atachon and Tano, but you haven't completed the Shemon Esrei before Shemaya Tefillah. You recite Atachon and Tano during Shemaya Tefillah. Because you know Shemaya Tefillah, which is the final blessing of request before we start the final three blessings, is a time that you could insert things. We insert things during fast over there. So that we've mentioned before, that's a place that if you've forgotten, that's like a last pit stop of places that you could insert something because it's kind of an open prayer. But so therefore, he says in this scenario, on a regular Saturday night you can't, but in this Motzei Shabbos you can't. But in this scenario where you don't have wine, and to avoid having to do Shemona Esrei again, so if you're holding before Shemaya Tefillah, you would insert it in the Shemaya Tefillah in the last prayer during Shemaya Tefillah. That's an option number one. B, if you remember after Shemaya Tefillah, let's say you remember after you said the blessing of Shema Kolenu, you must go back to Atachon. Sorry, you have to go back to Atachon and say Atachotanu and continue Shemona Esrei from there. Meaning, it's similar to like a finish of forgetting the Alaviyave in the times that you have to repeat. You go back to where you've forgotten it, or like forgetting the inserts of the blessing for rains. You go back to Atachon and Tanu. You go back to Atachonen. You insert Atachon and Tanu, and you complete the continuation of the Shemona Esrei. Means you have to say blessings 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. And if you remember after completing Shemona Esrei, you must repeat the entire Shemona Esrei. Okay, so that's basically the three options. Number one is if you remember before Shemaya Tefillah, you say it in Shemaya Tefillah. If you remember after Shemaya Tefillah, you have to go back to Atachonen. If you remember after you complete Shemona Esrei, so then you have to go and repeat the Shemona Esrei.
Is this when
According
if
to
you put Shuddis and Maariv or something, all right, that you would have to repeat the Shmones way if you forgot a Tachman Antanu, something, or you figure, all right, if you wait after benching of Shuddis or something, I forget. I assume that by Shuddis, all right, or okay, if you hadn't already benched, okay, you can eat as much as you want, right? But yeah, we just have to not.
Yeah, no, we're talking about in a case where you didn't bench yet. Where you bench, where I mean, so yes, if you started a meal before the Zman, and then you could eat into Motzei Shabbos. But we're talking about in a scenario where you're not holding before benching. You're talking about after Shalosh Shabbos, yes. All right, hold on, let's just finish this footnote. Remember, all this applies only if you're not able to obtain wine before Sunday night. Okay, this is important. Before Sunday night, meaning to say that probably would apply to Tisha B'Av as well, because Tisha B'Av you can make Havdalah Sunday night. Yes, Rebecca.
Um, so like let's say, first of all, I have a few questions. First of all, do all shuls wait until like the Zman when Shabbos is over to say Maariv?
Yes, usually, yeah.
Yes, Jonathan is right. Listen, depending on again, there's different places. Some people are in the north, like in Alaska. Then there's different. Then they daven Sunday morning, because the Matzah Shabbos could come out 1, 2, 3 in the morning, or it never gets dark in certain places. Also applies to places in North Europe. But let's say in a regular time frame of place, then depending, you have to wait Ma'ariv a little late. Some people wait mamish late. Some people try to daven mamish on this man, but he says you shouldn't do that. First of all, halachically, you have to wait 2 to 5 minutes after Shabbos. That for malacha. But even the idea of keeping the spirit of Shabbos with Ma'ariv, you're supposed to try to push it off at least, not right away like you do during the week. Some people daven earlier than others, etc. Then there's the Rabbeinu Tam's time. That's not a question of just expanding Shabbos. Like Rabbeinu Tam has a different zman. He says that Ma'ariv is not meant to be davened before this time. And if you accept the Rabbeinu Tam's, people like to kind of accept Rabbeinu Tam's zman when it comes to Shabbos, because with accepting Rabbeinu Tam's zman, you're extending your Shabbos longer. Okay, that's one.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
that's actually my next question. So I I guess I took on Rabbeinu Tam like I don't know, like a while ago. So let's say like I was on a Shabbaton last Shabbos and they made Havdalah a little bit before the Rabbeinu Tam Zman. So can I be Yotze with them and just not do
Yeah.
any malacha until
Yes, I think that's what most people do. Yes, if they're here. But I just want to look at the time. For instance, I'm looking at Yerushalayim. Let's just go to.
it's a difference of a half hour usually.
It's only a half hour. Hold on, let me just check. 'Cause it could be. It depends on the place where exactly you are in the world. But let's just see for a second. Just give me a second. So let's say Yerushalayim. Let's say so Yerushalayim. Well, Alosa Shachar could be as early as 3:48. Okay, so Yerushalayim is doesn't have their been time here. Okay, I have to check this. You have to have his manim thing over here. But you have to get.
I
It could be.
mean, I have something here like that will have it if you want me to look.
Hold on. I mean, I'm just gonna check on Zmanim. Okay, let's see Zmanim here. Hold on. Yerushalayim. And for which date? We're gonna do it for 11th. Okay, so he says, according to Chabad.org, says that Shabbos ends, let's say this week at 8:29. He also doesn't have Shas Rabbeinu Tam. It's 8:29. I think so. You said it's a half hour later?
Yeah, it's usually a half hour in New York.
I'm surprised that this website doesn't my regular website doesn't have it. Because that's interesting. All right, so I mean each person according to them just see if this has it. No, also not. Okay.
I
So yeah,
have something in front of me with this monim from like a few weeks ago, like everywhere, like regular time and Rabbeinu Tam in all the
so
different
what
cities.
so what's Rabbeinu Tam different, let's say in Yerushalayim a few weeks
So regular was 8:24 and Rabbeinu Tam was 8:59.
8:59, 8:24. So it's a little bit it's a little bit more than 30 minutes.
Are you
Right,
machmir?
but in New York it's 30 minutes usually.
So what do you say, Jonathan?
I just asked Rebecca, are you machmir the whole 72 minutes,
Yeah,
right?
she wants to. She says she wants to use 72 minutes for. She took on herself to keep Rebbeinu Tam. It's a big deal. The Rebbe actually was very. The Rebbe, like I said, the Rebbe was for it. The Rebbe was. Oh, here it is. That's why I couldn't find it. I was going the wrong direction. The Rebbe was for it because of it's extra. It's extra. Extra on Shabbos. Okay. Yeah. So okay, I get it. All right. So it could be. You said Shabbos Manis is 8. So here we have 8:28. And eight. So here I see it. So let's say this week. Let's say this week Shabbos Matas Maaseh. It'd be 8:28, 35 seconds. Regular Shabbos ends. 72 minutes will be 8:59 and 5 seconds. So it's also pretty close to 30 minutes. Yeah. All right.
So,
You have another question?
well, yeah, so I could be Yotzi with their Havdalah and just don't do Malacha
Yeah.
until,
Yeah. I mean, so if you can make your own Havdalah, that's preferable because obviously you want to finish Shabbos when you're finishing Shabbos. So if you don't have the ability to do Havdalah, then you could listen, but you'd refrain from doing Malacha till their Rebbeinu Tam's time is finished.
but even like a lot of some people say women shouldn't make Borei Mara Aish. Like even though it's better to still make my own Havdalah.
First of all, you could do Barim Eish separately on your own. First, listen, if the best thing would be really if you want to be able to mamish to do Havdalah after the 72 minutes would be to daven Maariv privately after the Zman at a Beit time. Means you can listen to Kaddish and all that if you want to be part of the minyan and daven and do Atachon and Tanu and Havdalah after 72 minutes. But let me check on that. I'm not so familiar with those who keep 72 minutes in a situation where they're not with the minion because it could be like that. But I do.
There were some Hasidim there, so I just asked them if they could make Havdalah again after, and they said yeah, no
Okay,
problem,
okay. All right, so
because
there
they
you go.
hold later anyway.
There you go.
Sorry, one more question, and then
Good.
so let's say I ate shalashudas and I benched already, or maybe I didn't have shalashudas that day or whatever. Um, can you drink like in the, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes before the Zman, before Havdalah time? Can you drink something?
You could
Should.
drink. You shouldn't drink past the time when you're supposed to stop drinking and eating, which is shkia time.
But why?
If you
Why do
wash,
you have to stop?
if you wash is something else. If you're washing, then you could carry a meal on much later. But that's the power of a suda.
But
But
what's the reason why a person's not supposed to eat or drink after Shkia?
because we don't eat and drink before once anytime we go into a time of a new time that we're supposed to remember and not forget about the time, we don't eat and drink. We don't eat and drink Matzah Shabbos. Look how strict he said. He says if you eat after Shabbos, then you have to say Shemona Esrei again if you forgot to do Havdalah. Like the eating is a very strict thing. We see that clearly from the previous law.
Because you can't make Havdalah at that point. It's not like you hit the time for Havdalah, so you can't
I
eat
know, I
until
know,
you
I
make
know,
Havdalah.
but once it hits skier, we start we that's the time when we're starting to be careful going into the new Zman. It's always like that.
Okay, got it.
Let's see the next law. I think a lot of these questions are going to be addressed going forward. After you do the Shemona Esrei, we do a half Kaddish, which is usually we do a whole Kaddish, but on Motzei Shabbos we do a half Kaddish. Then we say the Vihinoim. Why do we say Vihinoim? Is the fish who mizmor shel bracha. We say the Vihinoim is a blessing. Shabai, which is the blessing, Shabai Berach Moshe Yisrael B'Shashis Shesimu Melech the Mishkan. We know that when the Jewish people completed making the tabernacle, the Mishkan in the desert, Moshe gave the blessing of V'hinayim Hashem Elokeinu Ma'asidenu. So that's a blessing on our work, and going into a new week of work, we bless it. Yesh Ta'imrim Umid. Now, also make sure to say the V'hinayim standing. V'noigin Lichbol as a pasuk Achron Arach Yomim. We say from V'hinayim until Yeshu B'Seiser until the end, and we say the last final verse of Orach Yom Azbeyu, we say it twice. Achakach oimrim va'ataka. We'll see why in the footnotes. Achakach oimrim va'ataka. Then we say the second, the after the Volatzion, it starts va'atakadosh. We start va'atakadosh, which is traditionally, as we know, as the Volatzion. We start from va'atakadosh after Vihinom and Orach Yomim. V'seid Kedusha, which is the Kaddish of Uva L'Tzion. Shesharich leVihinoim, it's connected to Vihinoim. Why? She'ayidei melechas Mishkan, because when we did the labor of the Mishkan, meaning the building of the Mishkan, Shar Shechina b'Yisrael, which is At Kaddish. It means so Moshe Rabbeinu blessed the Jewish people Vihinoim that their handiwork, which is the handiwork of doing the malacha. Again, how does this all go into cycle? Matzah Shabbos, all the things that we did in the Mishkan, we're not allowed to do in Shabbos. That defines malacha on Shabbos. Anything that's considered malacha, how do we know what's the 39 malachas of Shabbos that you're not allowed to do as a prohibition? Are all the things we did in the Mishkan. So much so that even how you pass things from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah through Rosh Hashanah is how the Levites passed the beams from the wagons, which was a Rosh Hashanah over the Rosh Hashanah to the next Rosh Hashanah. So all the directions, everything of how they did it in the Mishkan is what defines what is considered a malacha, at least a primary malacha. Now, so when they completed the Melechas HaMishkan, Moshe Rabbeinu blessed them with the blessing of Vihinayam, and after the Vihinayam, what is the idea of the Mishkan is that Shar Shechina, God should rest amongst the Jewish people, which is what V'ata Kaddish, Yeshiv Tehillah, God comes and rests amongst the Jewish people. Therefore, we say V'ata Kaddish, Yeshiv Tehillah Yisrael. God should rest amongst the Jewish people, which is an idea of what the Mishkan is, and which is the idea of what this world is, which is the 6 days of the week that we bring Hashem into our space. Imchol, therefore, based on all this, Imchol Yom Tov b'Shavua Haba. This is an important law. If there is a holiday in the next week, I feel Erev Shabbos, even if the holiday falls out on Friday, Ein Omer V'Hinoim V'At Kaddish. Then we don't say the extra V'Hinoim V'At Kaddish. The Kivin Shomer V'Hinoim Ma'aseh Deinu Karineu, because when we're saying V'Hinoim is about our handiwork, we have to have a full week of 6 days. And because one of the days is not going to be a day of work because of the holiday, we're not talking about a holiday of Rosh Chodesh or even a holiday of Purim. We're talking about a holiday where you have to rest from work, which is Isser Malacha, which is a regular holiday. So then you don't say the V'Hinoim. If the holiday falls out on Friday night, right? So sometimes Sukkot could be Friday night, Rosh Hashanah could be Friday night. So then you do say the V'Hinoim, even though it's Yom Tov is next week, but it's next week on Shabbos. And because you have a full 6 days of work, therefore you would say the V'Hinoim. Because we only say V'At Kaddish because we said V'Hinoim. So therefore, if we don't say V'Hinoim, then we don't say At Kaddish. The Shaychel Adad, because they're connected. And after say V'Hinoim V'At Kaddish, then we say the complete Kaddish. So we have an extra Kaddish on Saturday night, which is the half Kaddish after Shemona Esrei. We say V'Hinoim V'At Kaddish and then a complete Kaddish. This is all with the minyan, of course. Okay, this is different customs, but according to custom of the Kitzur, we say V'Yitin L'cha on Saturday night, before davening, Matzah Shabbos. Then we say the Aleinu. V'chol zayis ha'arichas shemarichin la'achit tfilas Shabbos, Matzah Shabbos, hu k'dei she'yishu Yisrael b'ashlamas sidreim, now he finally says what we said in the beginning. That why do we do all this extras on Matzah Shabbos? So we have reasons. But the real reason is because we want to lengthen the time for those, unfortunately, who have to go back to hell, that they shouldn't have to go back to hell earlier, because the longer you wait, then they don't go back until after Shabbos is complete. We wait for the last person to complete their Shabbos. Now, how does it work in a system of, obviously, today where Jewish people live all over the world, in Australia, and I think what's the latest Havdalah, I would assume today in a populated place, is Hawaii. I don't, unless there's some islands between Hawaii
and... I think it's Hawaii.
So the latest Matzah Shabbos is Hawaii. The latest Shabbos coming in is Hawaii. The latest Matzah Shabbos is Hawaii. How does that work with hell, right? So what's to make a difference if I'm in Yerushalayim and I'm, I don't know, whatever, it's 13 hours ahead of Hawaii? What's the difference if I daven Maariv late, or if I do Havdalah late, or if I say Hu Racham long? If anyways, someone's not going to do Havdalah for another 13 hours plus in Hawaii. But there's a reason, because there's a whole shaila how we work with the clock. When, how does it work? It's kind of, time is different than how we understand it in our limited space. Okay. Footnote number 7. Like, for instance, the questions brought down, I think, in the tour. How did God create the world, right? If God created the world starting, let's say, from Jerusalem, so when you say the day was over, Yom Rishon, when is that? When it's over in Jerusalem? When it's over in whatever, however you start counting the time, wherever that 24 hours ends? which would be, either whether the dateline, or if they didn't use the dateline, if they use, I don't know, it could be Cyprus, if Cyprus has a different time. I'm saying if the full 24 hours, if you're starting the 24 hours from Yerushalayim. Either way, this is discussed in other subjects as well. Okay. When was the first Shabbos? God rested. Did he rest in Yerushalayim, or did he rest with time itself? Meaning, God rested. He said he stopped doing work on the Saturday, right? So he completed work on in Yerushalayim at 8 o'clock, but there's still jobs to be done in Hawaii. It was still Friday morning. So how did it work, right? Okay, so 8. During the festival, it should be recited while standing. Why? During the first verse, you have to stand by the first verse of Yehi Noyam, says the Mishnah Berurah, and preferably the entire chapter, says the Shari Tshuva. Okay, but I guess if you can't, best at least the first one. He says like this, and your Holy One are enthroned upon the phrase of the Jewish people. Okay, so says the Taz. The idea is because V'ata Kodesh Yeshiv Tilas Yisrael. That's why we say V'ata Kodesh, because it's a continuation of the blessing of Yehi Noyam. Through Yehi Noyam, through God Moshe Rabbeinu, blessing the Jewish people in their handiwork of building the Mishkan, it builds a place for God to rest amongst the Jewish people. I footnote number 10. He says, what are we talking about over here? Okay, talking about the last person to go to hell. Until then, some of the holiness of Shabbos remains. So says the Gra. This is based on the Zohar and the Medrash Tanchuma. Kisisa in Piskei Rabasai. Piskei Rabasai. Okay, so again, how does it work with time? That's another question. But as far as you're concerned, your time is your present time. So if you're in Yerushalayim, you're in Seattle, in New York, try to extend Shabbos as much as possible. Rebecca is one of those who does Rabbeinu Tam, 72 minutes. So that makes, Baruch Hashem, for those don't have to run back to the furnace. Okay, let's do a few more laws. Kashem shemitzvah lekadesh is the Shabbos b'knisasai alakah. So what we said so far was that we have to do Havdalah, and we know that we have to do 2 Havdalahs. One Havdalah preferably is in the Shemoneh Esrei, and even if you did in the Shemoneh Esrei, you still have to do it on a kais. So now, what's that idea of doing Havdalah on a cup of wine? So he says like this: Kishem shemitzvah the Kaddish is a Shabbos b'knisasei ala kais yayin. Just like we enter Shabbos, we bring it in with the Kiddush, which is Friday night on a cup of wine. And so too, when the Shabbos leaves, we sanctify the process of the completing of the Shabbos and of its celebrating its day with a cup of wine. The Hainu Havdalah, and that's the Havdalah services that we do it on wine. And we also make a blessing on the spices, on the smelly spices, and on the candle. Okay, this is where Rebecca asked the question. Women have an obligation to hear Havdalah. It's not just for men. Therefore, it's not, they can't wander off and they have to listen to Havdalah, especially if you're listening to someone else making Havdalah. If you can't find wine, so preferably, like always, wine is preferable. The Rebbe actually said to many people to try to find red wine even for Motzei Shabbos. So preferably, wine is preferable. If you can't find, so you could make it on beer or med, which was some sort of respectable drink made out of honey. Or any other respectful drink. That's a big discussion. What's considered Chamar Medina? Is Coca-Cola considered Chamar Medina? What's accepted today is beer, or something like some people will make on tea, grape juice. Hold on, Rebecca. And then also, I think some people allow for coffee. We'll see the footnotes. Chutz min hamayim, but of course, water is not something. Even if people today pay a lot of money for bottled and distilled and all the quality water, it's still not good enough to make Havdalah on. Yes, Rebecca.
What about like oat milk or almond milk if I drink that as a regular drink?
I don't know that. I don't know. I have to check.
Or coffee? Is coffee okay?
Coffee, I heard people do. Tea for sure. Coffee, I heard people do as well. Yeah, coffee, beer. Yeah, but coffee is Chomer Medina. Okay. 11. Which is done at the Havdalah cup of wine. The author seems to imply that just as Kiddush is a mitzvah da'iraisa, so is Havdalah. So the Kitzur seems to take the opinion that Havdalah is not a custom, it's da'iraisa, it's biblical. Many Rishonim, who's this? The Mefarish Tosfos read, okay, Tosfos Harosh, from Rabbeinu Kalmanus, and the Mesachas Nazir hold this view that it is da'iraisa, it's biblical to make Havdalah. However, the Rashba, Rabbi Shlomo Nadert, implies that though the Havdalah blessing is the da'iraisa, the cup of wine is the Rabbanan. So it's da'iraisa, it's biblical to leave Shabbos with the Havdalah, and that's why, of course, we find the law we learned before that if you that you have to do the Shemiras again in certain circumstances. But the wine part is the Rabbanan, is rabbinical. Still, others hold that the entire mitzvah of Havdalah is the Rabbanan. Others disagree. The Rabbeinu Tam and the Shibali Haleket and the Magid Mishnah, which is on all of them there's on the Rambam, hold that the whole mitzvah of Havdalah is the Rabbanan. So we have three opinions. One opinion is both the Havdalah and the wine, the kois, is the Iraisa, which is the Kitzur's opinion. Seemingly, the Kitzur's opinion based on the Tosfos Rosh and Rabbeinu Kalmanis. There's the opinions that hold that the Havdalah itself is biblical, but the idea of the kois is the Rabbanan, is rabbinical. And we have the Rabbeinu Tam and others that hold that the whole Havdalah is rabbinic and it's not biblical. Okay. Footnote of law number 4. Kivan Shagia ben Ashma. Okay, again, Rebecca, we just have to have patience. So Kivan Shagia ben Ashmashes, as soon as it comes to the time ben Ashmashes, Asul Echel Lishtei Shum Davar, then you have to Asul Lishtei Shum Davar, you can't eat or drink anything. Chutz min hamayim. Okay, there you go. Rebecca, sorry, according to the Kitzur, you can't drink water even after ben Hashmashis. Kaidem Havdalah before Havdalah. Achmi shemarich b'suda shlishis. But if you hadn't benched yet and you have the suda shlishis, the third meal, afilat techalai, even if you're going into the night, mutter, you could eat kivan shehizcha better because you started the meal in a time that was permissible. Umutter ladishis gam mikoisha birchas hamazon, according to the opinion of the Kitzur, you could drink from the wine of the birchas hamazon, even though it's after the benching. But you're making Havdalah, you're making benching on a cup of wine, you could drink that as well, even though you haven't yet daven Maariv and done Havdalah. We'll get this, obviously, we'll see if that's the opinion of everyone. But you can only do this if your custom is to always make Havdalah, is to make benching on a kais. But if you don't usually have that custom, if sometimes you won't make a kais, because you hold with the opinion that you don't always need a cup when you bench. So then you can't drink from the wine when you make a birchas hamazon. Before Havdalah, usually people will wait and then they use that for the Havdalah. Yes, Rebecca.
But what if you're having mazonos instead of like washing on bread for Shal Shabbos?
Most opinions are that if it needs to be washing. It's not mazonos is not enough to carry over meal.
But what if like you're like medically you're like supposed to like minimize how much bread you're eating? I
Okay,
thought
so
mazonos was a way of like you could have a mazonos Shal Shabbos.
Mazonos can be makam suda in certain times when we do mazonos in certain to establish a meal, but it's not enough. It's not enough usually to consider a suuda to carry on, like for instance, into Shabbos or into Motzei Shabbos.
Okay.
14. Once twilight arrives, Magen Avram, etc., others hold this. Mishnah Berurah Taz, however, rules more leniently, relying on the opinion of the Baal HaMeir, who permits starting the third meal before nightfall. See Bir Halacha. Okay, so the question is, how soon do you have to start the third meal? So he says once twilight arrives, it's forbidden to eat or drink anything except water prior to Havdalah. Interesting again. The Magen Avram and others, however, rules leniently. Taz, however, rules leniently, relying on the opinion of the Baal HaMeir, who permits starting the third meal before nightfall, even I guess after Ben Hashmashis. Okay. Footnote number 15. According to the Arizal, even water is prohibited. So that's our minhag. We don't drink even water. So halachically, you could drink water, but the Ari HaKadosh says once it comes Ben Hashmashis, you shouldn't even drink water. So it's a little later than Shkia than I said before. Okay. 17 is the Magen Avram and Chachmas Shlomo Eliyahu Rabbah says it's forbidden at this time to drink from the Birchas Mazon wine. So that's also our custom. We don't drink from the wine. I haven't seen anyone drink from the wine that we do the Birchas Mazon on. Okay. I'm not sure if the reason is because sometimes we don't bench with the kos, because very few people bench every time with the kos. Someone was in my house, my dear friend Rabbi Moshe Gorelik was in my house a year ago, and he told me that he asked Rabbi Groner once, why don't the Alter Rebbe talks so much about making Birchas Mazon on a kos? Why are people not more strict to do benching on a cup, at least in Shabbos, even if you don't have a minyan? And he said that the Rebbe's answer, he asked the Rebbe once, and the Rebbe told him, because people they want to open a wine. They don't want to open a wine on, it's monetary question, or they can't be bothered. But I think he said it was a monetary issue, and so therefore he was supporting the idea that one should try to make as much as possible kiddush on benching on a cup of wine, even when you're doing it alone, even during the week. But it seems from the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch that unless you're really careful to every time do benching on a cup, then otherwise you should not drink from the wine after the benching before Havdalah. All right. Okay, so just summarize this law. To summarize this law is he says twilight. So let's see what do we have over here? Twilight. What's it going to give us? Okay. It's just going to give us the it's definitely twilight today is definitely okay. Let's go back. So he says from twilight, it's obviously later than Shkia is when you could drink until then, you could eat until then. He says he brings over here in footnote number 11 that footnote number 14 that the Taz says that you could even saw through the shlishis, a little later than before, as long as it's before night. Though it's not that much. It depends. Some places Ben Hashmashis is longer than others. He
Wait,
says
sorry. How late can you start Shabbos?
going to the Taz before nightfall. I just want to bring up the Zmanim again. Okay, let's look at in Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim Shabbos ends without Rabbeinu Tam at 8:28, 35 minutes. Okay, so then let's go to the end of the day. Mincha Katana is 4. Okay, Plaga Mincha. Shkia is 7:51, and Motzei Shabbos is 8:28. So that's Shkia. It's sunset. Ben Hashmashis. Let me see what time Ben Hashmashis is. Hold on, sorry guys. Just might as well get this Zmanim clear. I have something that has all the Zmanim. I sent it to Rabbi Gestetner. Hold on, let's see over here. So here, this gives me everything. I'm just going to use any city that it has. It's in Israel. So he says, Shkia. So yeah, Shkia. Yeah, it doesn't bring Spanish Marshes. Hold on a second. Okay, it doesn't say here. I don't have the exact. There's different opinions of how late. What's the difference between Ben Hashmashis and Shkia? Sunset and twilight. So he says the Gaonim's opinion is that Ben Hashmashis starts with Shkia. So Ben Hashmashis is the same time as Shkia. Twilight is the same time as sunset. Rabbeinu Tam says that Ben Hashmashis starts after Shkia. That's why his Manim starts later. Okay, so there's a difference of opinion of what's the difference between twilight and night and sunset. So according to most opinions, sunset is bein hashmashis. So that's when shkia is when you would stop to drink, and according to the Rizal, even to stop drinking water. Again, Rebecca, if you're in a situation where you medically have to drink or take medicine and drink water with the medicine, that's different. We're talking about a person who could wait and wants to know if I should be drinking now water. So if you hold according if you're strict according to that result, you shouldn't even drink water after Shkia or Ben Ishmash's Shkia time. If you keep these questions, those who keep Rabbeinu Tam, so the Rabbeinu Tam's Shabbos ends later than the Shkia, the Ben Ishmash's is later, especially Ben Ishmash's is not the same time as Shkia, so then you have to check with your local rabbi if you could extend your drinking time as well.
Okay, it's a lot of information. I have to like, I don't know, I'm trying to understand like when, according to like mainstream opinions, like how late can you start Shabbos?
Okay, so let's see this again. The Taz in 14, the Taz says, he's reading what he says over here. The Taz, however, rules more leniently, relying on the opinion of the Baal Hamor, who permits starting the third meal before nightfall. But it doesn't say what before nightfall is. Before nightfall could be there's okay, depending on the city. Barbara would know. For instance, in Seattle, between Shkia from sunset until darkness is a long time. In Yerushalayim, it's not so long. Like in a place like Seattle, it could be, I think, 40 or 50 minutes from sunset to nightfall. In Yerushalayim, it's about 20 minutes. So it's very fast from the night, because depending on where you are in the globe, is how fast it becomes dark. He says over here that the opinion of the Magen Avram is that by Ben Hashmashis, hold on, Barbara, by Ben Hashmashis is when you stop. And he says the Taz says before nightfall is more lenient. Seemingly before nightfall would be any time before nightfall. So he doesn't say, I have to check the marker, the actual wording, if it's a specific time he's talking about, or just it's not 100% dark yet, then you could start Shalashudas. Yes, Barbara.
I was just going to say, when I light Shabbat candles, it kind of throws me off because it's still pretty light outside, even though the time Zaman is saying, yeah, it's time to light Shabbat candles.
Yeah, so again, depending on where you are, first of all, you light Shabbos candles 18 minutes usually in Seattle before Shkia itself. So that's another 18 minutes earlier. In Yerushalayim, you light it 40 minutes earlier, 39 minutes earlier. So you're not even lighting it at Shkia when sun starts to set. So, but still, yeah, in a place like Seattle, you have a long time between lighting candles and it's actually dark. In other places, it's a little faster. But if Rebecca, if you want technically to know, according to the Taz, how late you could start, we have to check that. Because he just says over here in the footnote, he says more lenient, relying on the opinion of the Bamor, who permits starting the third meal before nightfall. Again, that's only if you're starting the third meal. That's if you're washing. But you can't eat past everyone agrees you can't eat past seemingly you can't eat past Shkia.
I can ask a local Rav about that also.
Okay. Barbara?
Is there some sort of guide on Chabad.org that gives you a printout of the times and everything?
Yeah, again, that's also up for discussion. There's different shitas. The Alter Rebbe, for instance, if you're going to go to Chabad.org right now, and then let's use Jerusalem. So if you go to Jerusalem Zmanim today, so you want to know what time, let's say the fast starts, right? If there's a fast, so what time is Alos HaShachar? So here it's going to say that Alos HaShachar on Chabad.org will say in Jerusalem is 4:09 a.m. Earliest davening is 4:49. Then you have sunrise, which is Nate's 5:40. Okay, latest Shema. Okay, this is all according to the Alter Rebbe. Of course, Shkia would be 7:48. Nightfall would be 8:16. But nightfall is 8:16. But that's still not when Shabbos is out. Shabbos, we said, is out 8:29. So between nightfall and it means Tzeisa Kachavim, and actual Shabbos ends, proper night for Matzah Shabbos would be later. So you go to Chabad.org. But if I'm saying, like, for instance, there's for those who properly understand the Alter Rebbe's times, I'll give you an example. So we just said, what did we say? 4:08, we said. So it's here we're going to say that let's say Yerushalayim. So here he's going to say that Yerushalayim Alos HaShachar is 2:59. That's a good hour before what I just quoted you from Chabad.org. So according to this guy's calculation, Alo starts before 3 in the morning, 2:59, which would mean like if you keep it, you can't eat, till 5 o'clock in the morning on the fast. And then he'll say, he'll agree with Tzeitzak Achavim being 5:32, and he'll have Shkia Niris. He's going to say that Shkia is going to be 7:51 or 7:55, and he's going to have Tzeitzak Achavim will be 8:18, and Shabbos going out would be 8:21. So he's not that different. Tzeitzak Achavim 8:18, 8:21. I'm not sure why Chabad.org had 8:30 unless I was looking at the wrong week. Shabbos ends this week, July 11th. What date? 8:29. So I'm not sure. So the Zmanim are not always exactly. You have to check. Chabad.org is safe to go by if you're going to go for everything on that.
I just wanted to say that the My Zmanim website, and also there's an app called Clear Zmanim that just started. They give multiple. They give like I don't
You can
know
keep it.
they give all of those
Yeah.
times.
I think in one of our Shabbos classes in the beginning, we went through all this Manim breakdown. It's something that some people are experts in, and I'm not one of them. Okay, let's go a little further. Hey, gam melacha ein lasses kaidem Havdalah. Okay, we said before, you shouldn't do any kind of malacha. It's not Shabbos, because Shabbos finished, let's say 8:29 according to Chabad.org. But you shouldn't do any malacha. You're talking about grabbing your phone. It's preferably, and I know it's very hard today, and the world is very busy, and everyone has children and grandchildren, whatever. Everyone has reasons to grab your phone, but it's preferably to try to rush out of Shabbos is not respectful. To wait at least till after Havdalah, if you can, to start doing any mundane things. So there's gam malacha in last Havdalah, but now, okay. What about Rebecca's question? What about women who need to? He doesn't say need to go on your phone, but need to turn on the lights, right? Your husband's not home, or someone who has to make Havdalah is not home, and you need a light, or you need to turn on the boiler. I don't know. There's things that can't wait until the husbands come home or the man comes home. So here we have the leniency that if you say Baruch Hamav Mekodesh L'chol, but Or L'choshech Ben Yisrael Lam Ben Yem Shlish Sheish Ma'is. Okay, here he does the much longer version. Our version is Baruch Hamav Mekodesh L'chol, but here he says you should say the whole thing. Baruch Hamav Mekodesh L'chol Ben Or L'choshech Ben Yisrael Lam Ben Yem Shlish Sheish Ma'is. Baruch Hamav Mekodesh L'chol. So he says that a much longer version. I'm not sure if that's what you're familiar with, Rebecca. And then you could start doing malacha, but it seems like you should only be doing things that you need to do. Turn on the light if it's dark, what have you. But just to go on your phone, again, everything's depending on the situation. If let's say someone's coming home much later from a bringing or from a long shalosh, so do you have to wait 2-3 hours? If you can, you can. If you can't, then of course everything is what do they call it? It's game day calling. When the moment happens, you should try to make the responsible call of the situation. Okay, this is also a question for women who have to light candles on Motzei Shabbos. So if you have to light candles on Motzei Shabbos, and when do we light the candles on Motzei Shabbos? Before we do Kiddush, and before we do Kiddush, we do in the Kiddush Havdalah, right? Yak Nahaz. So the woman has to make Mavd ben Kodesh LeKodesh before they light the Shabbos, the Yom Tov candles on Motzei Shabbos going into Yom Tov. Okay, let's see the footnotes here. Melacha, regardless whether the Irais or the Rabbanan. Okay, so he says even if it's a rabbinic melacha, you shouldn't do it before Havdalah. Prior to Havdalah, if you omitted Atachan Tanu. Okay, so here he puts in a footnote. That's only if you didn't do the Atachan Tanu in Maariv. But if you did Atachan Tanu, a lot of people, for instance, bring their car to Shul on Friday. And they drive on Motzei Shabbos. That's not one of them because you did Havdalah in the tefillah. So then it's not. You don't have to be strict and not take a car ride or drive your car home because you did Havdalah, which is really the technical Havdalah was finished in Havdalah in Shemiras, and therefore you could do malacha if you didn't. What happens if a woman didn't have a Maariv and didn't hear Havdalah yet, so we say you make Baruch Hamav Kodesh L'chol. Eliyahu Rabbah and many poskim rule that it is sufficient to say Baruch Hamav Ben Kodesh L'chol, not like he says over here, the full Baruch Hamav Ben Kodesh L'chol Ben Ora L'Chodesh Ben Yisrael Lam. So the custom, that's the custom by Jewish people, and that's differently in other customs. But the custom that I'm familiar with, we just say Baruch Hamav Ben Kodesh L'chol. So does that answer your questions, Rebecca? On the
Yeah, I've never heard anyone say the longer version. It does make sense because it's sort of like the gist of Havdalah, so it makes sense logically, but I've never heard anyone do that before.
Okay. All right, so let's stop here and we'll pick up next week with the rest of the laws of Havdalah and Matzah Shabbos.
Thank you.
Tov, take care. And Rebecca, if anything you find
Thank
out,
you, Rabbi.
post on the chat.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
take
you.
care.
Okay,
Take care. Bye.
bye.